Well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Joe Oddie with Eagleview. We are still having some folks get all signed in and squared away, so we're just going to give it another minute or so, and we'll get started, so hang tight. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you again, everyone, for taking time out of your busy day and spending some time with us here at Eagleview to learn about some new 3D capabilities that we're offering. So again, my name is Joe Oddie. I'm the Director of Partner Strategies here at Eagleview. And we're going to be joined by a handful of a couple of featured guests here. So there's myself on the left. We're going to have our Senior Product Manager, Matt Paul, and also our Sales Director from our partner, Skyline, who's going to be all talking to you today about 3D mesh and the new capabilities that Eagleview is bringing to market. A lot of us are, those of us in the GIS community are very familiar with 3D. It's definitely been something that's been on the rise over the last few years. And honestly, it's been around for a while. But one of the issues is it's always been maybe not as easy to access and easy to use. Maybe it's too complicated. Maybe there's just not good software that goes along with it. So what we're here to show you today is some of our new capabilities that we're launching with our partner Skyline to be available to all of our Eagleview customers. And we're going to show you how easy and useful these can be by talking about a variety of things. So here's our outline that we're going to go through today. We're going to, for those of you not familiar with the two companies, Eagleview and Skyline, we're going to talk very briefly about our two companies so that we're all on the same page. One of the things that really sells 3D, what the value is, what can I do with it? I think everybody agrees that 3D is cool, right? It's fun to look at. It's engaging for both you and constituents to play with. But what can I really do with it? What kind of problems can I solve? And that's one thing we're going to talk about here is the value that 3D brings. We want to show you a little bit about how the sausage was made and the methodology and the output of these 3D mesh. Then we're going to talk about, we're going to actually show you a live demo, which is going to be a meat of the presentation, where we're going to show it to you in our application, in our Eagleview Cloud application. So Matt's going to run you through that demo. And then Chris is going to come on and show you the Terra Explorer software, which is Skyline software, and all the additional things that you can do with 3D. So there's a lot of functionality baked into both of these products, and all of our Eagleview customers have access to all of them. So whether you wish to use 3D within Eagleview's applications, whether you want to use it in Terra Explorer, whether you want to use it in some third-party application like Esri or something else, we're going to have solutions for all of those things. So stay tuned. It's going to be very exciting. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end of the session. So very briefly, let's just talk about who Eagleview is for those of you not familiar. You may recognize the name Pictometry. That's the name we were founded as in 1998 out of Rochester, New York. And we really pioneer the idea of aerial oblique photography. We provide aerial imagery, we provide software, and we provide analytics, and have over about 1,000 employees that are now currently employed by Eagleview. We have a lot of patents. Everything that we do is proprietary. We make our own cameras. We make our own lenses, camera equipment, the software stacks, the software platforms. All of that is unique and protected by over 300 patents. The customers really love us. They tend to stay with us. We have over 90% retention rate. We do have GISPs on our team, and we're nearing about 2 billion images in our cloud database, which is the largest of any aerial vendor that is out there. And we're covering about 94% of the US population. So here's a coverage map of Eagleview's footprint in the last 10 years. So this isn't even going back to 1998. This is just in the last 10 years. You can see that that 94% of the population right here, you can see that we do fly in Canada. We have over 100 aircraft flying and capturing imagery every single day. The different colors that you see on this map just simply represent different resolutions of imagery, because we allow our customers to dictate whether they want real ultra high resolution, whether they don't need as much in the rural areas. So we give our customers those choices. That's what the different colors are represented here. Again, as Pictometry and now Eagleview, we really pioneered the idea of oblique aerial photography, and oblique meaning that side angle, that 45-degree angle view that you're looking at here. It just allows you to see the side of a building or the structure or whatever you're looking at, and then you're able to rotate it around and see it from all four cardinal directions. It's kind of how your eye is naturally meant to look at photography. It's how what makes sense to your brain versus that top-down view that you might get from satellite view. We still capture that top-down view, but we also, we're really, our bread and butter is really the side or angle obliques. Everything you see on an oblique image, you can measure, so you can measure not only distance and area, but because you have the oblique perspective, you can measure height, which is very valuable. There's elevation data baked into the imagery so that you can measure the change in elevation between 2 points or a spot elevation. You can turn on your contour lines to understand the terrain. Obviously, this is going to be a lot more visually appealing in the 3D mode, which we'll get to, obviously. But these are all things you can do on the oblique images. Eagleview, we really prides ourselves on our ability to integrate into third-party systems. We capture some of the best imagery on the market, and we want you to ingest that imagery into your existing workflow. Yes, we do have products that we offer that you can use standalone, but oftentimes the best method is to get that oblique and ortho imagery directly into your other applications that you use every day. So if you're a tax assessor, we have integrations into a lot of the large, many of the camera vendors that are out there. If you're in public safety, we can integrate into your 911 systems. If you're in an Esri shop, we have solutions across the board there, and then other GIS and public works platforms as well. So once you get access to Eagleview imagery, there are lots and lots of different ways to push that into existing workflows. Again, we do capture orthogonal or top-down imagery. That's very important for GIS work when you're doing mapping or GIS layer creation and any other sorts of analysis. We do provide top-down orthos. And then also, once you get that imagery with it in-house, you have the ability to share it across your department. So a lot of our customers are at county level. So if I'm a county, let's say I'm the county assessor or the county GIS department, if you're the ones that procure the imagery, you have the ability through licensing to share across the board. So all of the departments at the county level, and then all the departments within the counties, all the cities and the towns and the villages are licensed to use the imagery as well. So we really encourage the sharing of these resources across the board because there's use cases in all major departments. And again, we do offer various GSDs, and GSD stands for ground sampling distance. So this is the resolution. What resolution do you need? Do you need real ultra high resolution, like 1-inch imagery that you see on the left, where you can just tell a tremendous amount of information about a location? Do you not need that much, 3-inch? Or in the rural areas, maybe you don't need ultra high resolution of forests and swamps and deserts and whatnot. So you can dial that back a little bit. So we allow our customers the choice in the resolution that they get in an area. But this is an example of some of our 1-inch imagery. It's stunning. It really is not a drone. This is not a guy on a ladder either, or a boom. This is from an aircraft a couple thousand feet above the ground, capturing this level of resolution. So it's incredible the amount of detail you can get out of these images, cracks in sidewalks and feature identification. And now imagine taking things like this and then turning that into a 3D mesh. So that's what we'll discuss that here later today. All right, so I want to give Chris at Skyline, our partner. We've been partnered with Skyline for quite a while now. And Chris is going to talk just briefly about Skyline as a company. So go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, Chris Cressy here, and I manage sales for Skyline Software Systems in the U.S. Skyline is over 20 years old now. We're a U.S. company headquartered in Herndon, Virginia. We have offices and sales all around the world, including our development office in Israel. So a lot of times we've been developing products and services and data products that you may have seen but may not have attributed to us. So in general, I'm really excited to be a partner with Eagleview, and especially with the launch of the Eagleview 3D. I think it's really amazing, and it's taking it to the next level of what we can do together. Next slide. A little bit about Skyline. We're primarily a software company. So we've got kind of an end-to-end set of software suite, starting with PhotoMesh, which will be one of the principal components we're going to talk about today is our photogrammetry product that basically creates digital twins from aerial, drone, and even handheld imagery. The other one we're going to highlight today is Terra Explorer, which is our GIS geospatial visualization analytics tool and something that is fully integrated with Eagleview 3D. So we'll give you some ideas of how that works as we go through the presentation. And I think, let's see, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go, there we go. I'm going to go back a little bit, and I love doing this, just explaining a little bit about how this actually works, the science and the methodology involved. You know, how do we, for many of the customers, it almost looks like magic. I think, you know, most of you customers probably have a good understanding now of how aerial imagery works, and you can see the results, and it's fairly intuitive. But how does that turn into 3D digital twins, 3D mesh data sets? And so first of all, PhotoMesh is our product to do that, and that's the underpinnings of the products you get from Eagleview 3D. It's hugely scalable, which means we can do, you know, not just a block, but or you know, a set of blocks. We can do whole cities and counties. The largest project we've done with Eagleview so far is over 1 million high resolution images and for a whole county. So you can make, you know, data for the whole county, your whole data set, virtually any size. We really proud of our product. I feel confident to tell you it is the highest quality, highest accuracy product that can do this in the marketplace. And one of the key things and one of the underpinnings of the Eagleview 3D solution is everything is streamable. We produce this in a way, it's not just a giant block of data that you can't use. It's a fully streamable product set that you can then actually use in third-party applications. Next slide. So this is the kind of data you get. This is, you'll see more of this, Omaha, Nebraska, but we produce very, you know, whole cities down to the resolution that Eagleview captures. So 1, 3, or 6 inch, we can produce data in 3D from that. And it almost seems like magic to me, and I'm involved in it. So I'm going to give you a little more detail how that works. But again, whole cities, whole counties. Next slide. The technology actually works at any scale. And here's an example. This is not a photograph. This is a 3D reconstruction of a cell tower from about 1,500 high resolution images. So it can work at virtually any scale, and you can use the same technology from whole cities all the way down to close range photography of detailed industrial equipment. Next slide. So a couple things, you know, how does it work in terms of aerial collection? Well, one of the key things to note is that Eagleview 3D, you know, Joe already talked about oblique imagery, and Eagleview is a leader in developing the use cases for oblique imagery. But amazingly enough, PhotoMesh and photogrammetry works from the same imagery. You don't have to do anything else. You already have the image source that you collect for oblique, and your image sources are exactly what we need to produce a 3D model. And, you know, photogrammetry has been around since the 1400s. The first real use cases was Leonardo da Vinci using it to create scale drawings of architecture and people. And you know, that was kind of the embryo of genesis of photogrammetry, but it's evolved quite a bit over the years. And a couple key things here. You can reconstruct what you can see. You need lots of different angles to make it work, is kind of the big picture. So exactly what you get from Eagleview 3 oblique imagery, you get, you know, shots from every angle, every side of the objects in question. Next slide. So in general, how it's produced, Eagleview will fly the city or county or large scale data set. They'll fly it in a regular pattern and then collecting imagery from all different angles. And so we end up with typically thousands of high resolution images of the source. You get a hint of how it works from this screen snapshot from PhotoMesh. If you look in the center, it's a little hard to see, but the green lines are actually the fields of view of the cameras focused on one, you know, small area of this large city. And so the idea is you'll get not just one photograph of every point in the city or county, you will get tens or hundreds or of photographs of each component from every different angle. And that's key. And that's exactly what's provided by Eagleview's collection process. Next slide. So a couple of the highlights. I think I've already stated this, but it's essentially we are optimized. Photomesh, we've optimized it for Eagleview's camera systems and their collection process. So you don't have to do anything else. You start with Eagleview imagery and you just order the 3D and boom, there it comes. Our process, the product actually works at any scale. So aerial, drone, handheld. So that's something to keep in mind. You can do the same kind of thing. For ultimate accuracy, we can actually, and we're one of the few companies that does this, we can actually include LiDAR of the same data set and basically fuse the LiDAR and imagery into one 3D reconstruction process. So we get that geometric accuracy, even higher accuracy of the LiDAR with all the photographic accuracy of the actual photographs. And also for accuracy, we can use ground control points, down to survey grade accuracy, for many projects, but very high accuracy in terms of geospatial accuracy. And then another key thing is the outputs. You get a standard set of outputs with Eagleview 3D, which is the 3D mesh in both the Esri SLPK format as well as our 3DML file format, and then streaming through Eagleview 3D. But there are other outputs you can produce from the same process, and they can be ordered optionally. So you can get a point cloud from this data set. You can get a true ortho photo process, and you can also get elevation data sets. So just keep that in mind that it's a very flexible approach, and there are other outputs you can get from the same process. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit of background on how photogrammetry works. I'm going to hand it off. I think we go to Matt now for the use cases and demo.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'll jump into it. Hi, I'm Matt Paul. I'm a senior product manager at Eagleview. I'm going to go through the use cases before doing the live demo. For many of you on the call, you probably already know the use cases, but the list goes on and on. As I talk to more and more customers, I realize the potential for 3D really is more than even I'd imagined. When it comes down to it, though, what I'm hearing from customers, this often has to do around the subject of planning. So it could be, for example, residential, or I should say zoning and planning for areas. It could be residential, commercial, industrial. They want to be able to segment off and be able to view and even plan a future for how the different zones will grow over time. It could be for public works, whether it's the placement of utility poles, it could be street signs, it could be growing where they're putting sewer pipes. Being able to visualize that in 3D provides them many potential. And then emergency services, when your 911 operators are on calls in critical situations, being able to view and provide feedback to those that might be on site and coordinate those services provides a lot of potential for 3D. There's many more, but I encourage you, as you hear them or as you need them, feel free to reach out to us and talk to us about how we can meet your needs. Next slide. The next slide is my demo. Excellent. Thanks for switching to the next slide. So yeah, I'm going to jump right into my demo. I'm going to share my screen. Just give me about 2 seconds. Everybody should be seeing my screen. Initially, when you see this, your first instinct might be that this is a top-down 2D image, but I'm going to jump right into just moving around the scene. You can see I can tilt down. It is a fully 3D image that we have here, a fully 3D scene that we have. I can move around freely. I can obviously pan left to right, zoom in and zoom out, as well as rotate in any space that I have here. And as I move around, you can see the 3D mesh stays crisp and actually moves quite, is quite easy to move around in with just a couple clicks moving back and forth. There is additional tools for navigation on my right panel here. We have a whole list of tools. I'll talk about a few of those, but I'm jumping to navigation real quickly. One thing I just like to show is, again, when it comes down to collaborating with other perhaps users in your organization, it's helpful to rotate in space in order to have a nice fluid view of whatever scene you're trying to look at. So you can see it from all angles in a nice clean view. I'm going to stop the rotation. You can also add locations. So say, for example, there's a location that I want to return to, even though I am moving around the map fairly frequently. I can simply say that this particular spot, we'll just call this my industrial center. I'll click add a location. I'll name it to industrial area. I'll then close it. And you'll see now it shows up as one of the markers, one of the bookmarks that I can revisit. And if I were to move around the scene and say, oh, I got to return back to my industrial area, I just click that real quick and it flies immediately back to the bookmark wherever I place that. So lots of functionality for navigation. For many of your end users, simply being able to see this 3D scene, move around the 3D scene, and get to where they need to be provides them a lot of potential towards fulfilling their use cases. So I've been showing quickly just a lot of the potential for navigating, but I'm going to take a step back and actually talk about what you're seeing on screen as I move around, because what you're seeing is actually a web browser. There was no in order for me to get to where I am today, there was no installation. I didn't have to download a 3D mesh. I didn't have to download a software package. All I had to do was go to this URL at the top, apps.eagleview.com/EV3D. With that link and the ability to sign in, having an account, within seconds, your users can get immediately to this view and start using their 3D mesh. So it's incredibly powerful. In addition, as it's being all in the web browser, for those that may already notice or recognize this blue bar that I have on the left side, this blue bar with all of the applications in it is actually a new product with Eagleview called Eagleview Cloud. This Eagleview Cloud platform is the place where all of our users can go with a single sign-on to get to all of your applications. So whether it's another application with Eagleview or this, all it takes is one sign-in. Once you sign in, we also support single sign-on. So if your organization, perhaps your entity, allows you to sign in so that all of your applications require just one password or one login, we support that as well through Eagleview Cloud, and that includes access to Eagleview 3D and our 3D browser. So that is the high level of what we offer in the 3D, what we have for 3D. I'm going to jump through some of the tools that we have on the right. I mentioned the fact that we have the ability to navigate throughout the application. There's also quite a bit of analysis tools that are included with our web viewer. Say, for example, this particular building we have here, as I zoom in on it, you knew that you were going to, you knew that there was some urban planning that needs to be done and the footprint of the building needs to be expanded, and you want to measure that building in our 3D model. With our distance tool, which has a lot of different capabilities, all it takes is a couple clicks and you can measure from end to end what the size of that particular building is. Right now it's 34 meters from one side to the other. And I can rotate around. So I'll rotate to the other side of the building here. Whoops, there we go. And I'll get another measurement. And I'll measure that side of the building. So now I can measure all four sides of the building quickly and easily with just a couple simple clicks. In addition to being able to measure a distance, I can also measure the height of a building in some of the similar fashions I was just showing. All you do is change whether you're measuring along a horizontal distance or a vertical distance. So I'm going to turn that panel on and I'll click at the bottom and click there. And there we go. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see. Now I'm getting 5 meters from the bottom of the building to the top of the building. By the way, I'm just racing through this. Obviously, you could zoom in and get pixel perfect accuracy if need be. So that is the measurement tools that we have available in our 3D product. There's lots of analysis tools. I won't have time to show all the capabilities that are available just in our web browsing viewer that we have here. I'll jump through one more real quickly that I like to show off, is that a lot of times customers want to know about how a placement of a building or a pre-existing environment, pre-existing feature in the environment might affect the other buildings as the sun traverses through the sky. And so we also have a environment option here. I can turn on light and shadow, and actually I'll go to a taller building. This building right here is a decent taller building in the scene, and I can actually turn the dial here. As I turn it back and forth, it actually changes shadows over time and get all the way to night. So you can see as we get to a later hour, the shadows cascade across the environment here, showing for lots of potential use cases, especially important for perhaps the valuation of a building. As you put a new building up, this could actually block the view of other buildings, and shadows can help you to calculate and demonstrate that to other people within your department. Whew. So lots of capabilities here as I zoom in and out. I talked mostly, or I'm showing mostly this downtown area of Los Alamos, New Mexico. But one of the reasons I chose, again, to show off the capabilities of how 3D is differentiated from our 2D imagery. As I pan down, Los Alamos is actually in the beautiful mountain areas of New Mexico. You can see beyond the 3D model, we actually show the elevation of all the mountains behind it. So you can see further out into the distance and how this community exists out in a mountainous terrain. And as I go down into the ravine here, I can show, and it's coming in, there we go. I can show ravines as well, and how that impacts the community around it, so that you can see, regardless of whether it is an urban environment, a residential environment, or even some of these more rural areas with terrain, how you can use that in, like I said, 911 emergency situations. This is obviously many people on bordering, lots of residential areas bordering these mountainous areas where there could be a 911 scenario, where being able to communicate the intricacies of the terrain back to your 911 providers or your first responders can have huge impacts in saving lives faster and, obviously more safely. All right. So that is a lot of the high level features and functionality that we have, within our web viewer. I'm going to show just one more feature. I'm going to actually turn the lights on or up so you can see a little more clearly. Is that right now what you're seeing is in some ways a basic scene. You might have noticed that there are some street labels that we have, like we have Trinity Drive, 15th Street, Deacon Street, all here in the middle. That is data or layer information that is overlaid in our 3D model. Chris is going to go a little bit more deeply into all of the different ways you can layer information on top. But again, even though this is our web viewer, all of this is streamed. Was the 3D model that's streamed from our hosted cloud server, or the data itself? This can all be streamed into your web browser. And just like similar GIS applications or map viewing applications in the past, that you've seen in the past, you can turn those layers on or off. So if I go to my project tree, which I showed, highlighted a little bit before with the different locations I showed, you can also turn those on or off. So for example, if you did not want to see street signs or add more additional data, by just a click of a button here, I can turn that, like I said, turn the world data off. Now you'll see, and there's a whole bunch of information under that world data. You can see I can turn the street labels on or off. And so whether it is those labels or your own information that you bring to our 3D mesh, that additional data can help make faster decisions and obviously more accurate, more precise decisions in whatever work you're trying to do. Whew. So that's my demo. I'm going to stop sharing and then pass it back to Joe. Do you take it from here?
Yep. Okay. So thank you, Matt. So we're going to have Chris talk a little bit about their product called Terra Explorer, and then he's going to jump into a demo of that product as well.
Great. Next slide, Joe. Yeah, great demo, Matt. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to expand on that a little bit, and I think Joe and Matt both alluded to this before. A lot of people look at this and it really is magic, the three-dimensional data sets you can produce these days. what do you do with them? That's the, what's the use case? How do I use these? So I think one of the things I just wanted to really highlight here with what you're seeing, Eagleview 3D, you can get all the data as a file set, and it can be gigabytes or even terabytes of size, depending on how big it is, and it's usable that way. But Eagleview with 3D has made it really easy. So it's streaming. You don't have to store it. It just comes right from Eagleview's cloud. So if you look at this kind of end-to-end solution workflow, the Eagleview collects the imagery for you, flies the aircraft, collects the imagery. They produce a 3D mesh. That 3D mesh is loaded in the Eagleview cloud, and then it can be streamed. And you are viewing it in the Eagleview 3D application, but it can also be streamed to other third-party applications. And I think that's really important to understand. And you don't have to, you can create different data sets and just have a reference to the streaming data set in all of them. You don't have to copy it and reproduce it and make it again. That streaming is really powerful from that standpoint in terms of data management. So you've got another way to look at it, and I think this resonates with a lot of people. I look at 3D, these 3D meshes can be your new base layer for GIS and geospatial data. You're used to working with maybe terrain and imagery as your base layer. Now a photorealistic, photo-accurate, geospatially accurate 3D data set can be the base layer upon which you build your projects and do your engineering work. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to show you, and this is just kind of a slide to introduce Terra Explorer. And Terra Explorer is our Windows software that you can purchase from Eagleview as another application that works with the same data set. So I'm going to show you a few other capabilities, and really the idea is to try and hint at some of the use cases. I'm going to try and keep this to about a little over 10 minutes from here. So I'll hint at some of the applications, but some of the key capabilities. Again, you can stream from Eagleview 3D right into Terra Explorer as a Windows application with more capabilities. And that's very similar. You could do the same thing with ArcGIS, for example, from Esri. You can stream this to ArcGIS from the same data set. Now, once you've done that, you can overlay your 2D and 3D GIS data. You can pull in LiDAR data. You can pull in CAD data, BIM data, other 3D models, other 3D meshes. You can measure and analyze with all that combined data set, and then you can create custom projects and presentations and even export those out to third-party applications as you need to. So Terra Explorer is a very versatile tool that kind of lets you create projects and do special purpose projects from this general purpose 3D mesh base layer. Okay, so with that, I'm going to share. Got this work ready to go. Okay, so this is Terra Explorer, the Windows program, and I'm showing the same data set that you just saw in Eagleview 3D's browser viewer, but here it's in a Windows application. And you can see I've got actually a big part of the whole US mapped in here with third-party imagery. And then this area of interest that's colored a little differently is that Los Alamos project we were just looking at. To give you a quick idea, this I can measure here as well. So this is roughly 170. I can do this as accurate as I want, but it's roughly 170 square miles of data. And I'm looking at the whole darn thing in one shot, right? So, well, that's great, but I can also now zoom in and zoom right into the to the town of Los Alamos and see that in basically the full resolution. I think there was someone asking what resolution was this captured at. I believe the source imagery was maybe, I don't know if it was 1 inch or 3 inch. I don't know if you know, Joe.
3 inch.
3 inch. Okay. So yeah, so 3 inch. And you can see as I zoom in, I only have so much resolution. So I'm not creating more detail than was in the source imagery, but it's actually very, very sharp. Again, you can do things like create different viewpoints. So I can zoom around to different places that I've just stored. Let's see, go to here's looking west. You can even do, this is a general fly mode. You can do a walk mode. So I can go through and turn it on walk mode and go down to the street level. And you can see the representation at street level is usable, but the detail is not quite there that you would have from the aerial view. So that's the limitation of what you've captured. But again, I can go from, from the whole city, the whole state, right down to the street level. In the tool itself, you'll see that very much like other GIS products, there's a whole project tree with all the different layers of components. And I've got 3D data and GIS data, and it's all built into layers that are all configurable by you, the user. So I can add my own data as needed. I think I showed you some measurements, a couple more measurements. If I go back here to Los Alamos, let's go to the airport, just to give you an idea. So here's the airport in 3D. Wow, that's a crazy looking airport, huh? Right, a canyon right next to it. So how long is that runway? Very easy to go in and measure it. I just go to the analysis tool, distance, boom, boom. And wow, that's really interesting because this runway is not flat. There's a 91-foot elevation change from one end of the runway to the other. Things you wouldn't see in a 2D model easily, right? So that shows you the power of 3D to visualize those kind of things. Again, you can look at both urban areas, but this thing does a remarkable job of doing the rural areas as well. So here's the canyon outside of town. There's a ski resort. Again, the measurement tools, this is all full 3D. Now, it is accurate 3D, so I can click on any point and I've got the latitude, longitude, and altitude elevation of that point in space. So all that is fully measurable. I can also do things like contour maps and do a live contour map with, to visualize that right in the 3D tool. There's slope analysis, a whole host of different analysis tools. I think we already showed the shadow, so I'm not going to show that again. One of the things you can do here that is interesting, this is, since it's all streaming, I'm running this on a laptop PC. I don't have to have all the data at one time in the tool. So here I'm looking at Los Alamos. Another project we did recently was Omaha, Nebraska. Oh, I'm flying across a couple states, and now I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've got a beautiful 3D model of Omaha. Turn off the contour. Yeah. So same kind of thing, right? So you can have multiple projects, any scale, the whole Earth in your data system, in your in the cloud, and be able to view these all in a single project environment. Another thing that Joe didn't, or Matt didn't quite show is virtual tours. This is a very powerful presentation tool. So I can go and do a virtual tour where I've pre-programmed a set of views. So here back to Los Alamos, I'm going to fly in and do a couple of views. I can turn on and off different elements and create a very simple presentation that can be shared with your constituents or your stakeholders. This is literally took me, 5 minutes to create. So a simple fly through every time comes the same way. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to show this store and pop up a little sign. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is interesting. Now, again, what are we going to do with this? Well, it's powerful to see this on its own, but I want to do more than just look at the data. So now what I want to do is import some GIS data. And again, think of the 3D data set as your base layer. So let's do a couple things here. I'm going to fly back to Omaha. And so pretty 3D. I've got the whole city. I can see the skyline, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I can turn off the 3D. And I can bring in parcels and building footprints. So this is just coming from the municipality GIS system. This is public data. I've got a little tooltip. I can see this in 2D, and I've got, I've pulled my cursor over there. I've got some classification of different building types with colorization. I can just float over the objects, over the footprints of the buildings and see the address. I can also pull up full detail of whatever was in the GIS data set for this, from this external GIS data. I've got all the attribution that was in there, all in 3D. Okay, that's kind of neat. That's what it looks like in 2D. It's a little confusing. I can provide more, I can provide labels on the building. Well, what happens when I show this in 3D? Total different environment. Now I've colorized my 3D model based on the building. I've shown the information in a fully 3D context in a way that you really can't understand from a 2D map. And again, all the attributions there, the tooltips, I can see the building types, whether it's commercial or public works, public building, I can see the addresses, I can see the names of the building, but all in a very intuitive 3D way. So this shows I can pull in data, and many of you have, obviously, you have large GIS data sets for your communities that you can readily just pull in, and those can be either streamed in or pulled in as shape files or other standard geospatial formats. Let's go back to Los Alamos. All right, so for example, let's look at more of a utilities aspect. I might have some utility data, and I didn't have that in this case. I did find some different GIS data from publicly available from Los Alamos. So they had a bunch of GIS data in different formats, and I was able to pull some of that in. We can also work with OpenStreetMaps. Where's the OpenStreet? Yeah, so OpenStreetMaps is one of the things that's already pre-built into the Eagleview 3D viewer that you get roads and other building information. So I can turn some of that stuff on, go in, and let's see, I'll turn on the OSM data, and instantly I've got information coming in for, let's see, I've got roads, and I've got other types of building and site information. So over here, I can see this is the Children's Montessori School. Over here, I've got the Bradbury Science Museum, and all that is instantly available, laid on top of your 3D data set. In this case, the OSM data has restaurants, has parking lots, a whole host of information. So I've got the street names coming in. Here's an example where I took the available data from the Los Alamos GIS data site, and I was able to pull in street center lines, and I can turn those on and see those in 3D. There we come. Takes a second to load in. So I can, again, pull those in. I've got the street names and the center lines of the streets, which is normally 2D, but now I'm laying it down on a 3D environment. Similarly with addresses, I've got address data that's coming in from the GIS. I'm showing those as push pins in this case, and I can just hover over them and see the actual address of each building in the environment. Go back to this one over here. Here's an example. Underground utilities are pretty interesting. So let me turn off some of this stuff, make it a little simpler to see. I'm going to turn on, I've just drawn in some underground water utilities, and I said not turning on. Oh, it's a street line. Okay. Utilities. Oh, so I've got underground water utilities here. They're actually in 3D. Gosh, they're under the street. I can't see them. To make that possible, to see, I just go to underground mode and I can see the utilities that are under the ground as vector data. In this case, it could even be 3D data under the ground, but this is 3D vector data for underground utilities. Similarly, you can look at above ground utilities. So here's an example of streetlights. I'll turn that back off. And I was able to go through and identify that, in this case, if you had it as GIS data set, you could put a 3D model in each case. You can see from the 3D reconstruction from imagery, I don't have the resolution to recreate a 3D light post, but I can put a 3D model in its place at that point, or an icon or whatever I need for the GIS location of those streetlights. Okay, I guess a couple last things. We mentioned other use cases would be public safety. So a big use case would be probably mission planning, event coordination, things like emergency response. So for example, let's go over here. I've put a couple things in place. Let's go over here to the Hilltopper field. And I've got let's say I have some kind of event taking place at Hilltopper field. Could be, oh, God forbid, an explosion. So I've got an animation of that. So if you're trying to pre-plan events or responses to events, could be fire, could be smoke. I can then look at, how do I respond to that? What kind of vehicles do I bring in? Fire, SWAT, rescue, where would they go? Where would they park? So a very valuable tool to try and, especially pre-plan operations, or even in semi-real time, be able to look at how to plan missions and operations relative to public safety and emergency response. Okay, I think that's about it. I've got my 15 minutes of fame. So with that, let me hand this back to Joe, and I think we're ready to kind of wrap up and do some questions and answers.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. It was a great demo. Okay, so guys, in summary, we just want to recap about the ease of all of this. As we mentioned before, 3D is not new. It's been around for a while, but getting the right software to use, and you'd have to always have it installed on your machine. You'd have to usually have the 3D data sets stored on a local server, which, as if we were doing something as large as Los Alamos or a huge city, that's a very large data set that you'd have to dedicate server space to. We've really simplified all of those things. No longer do you necessarily have to have desktop software installed on every single machine. You can do it through a browser, through Eagleview Cloud, through our entitlements. If you've acquired a 3D mesh with us, then you're going to be able to access it through Eagleview Cloud. And you saw what Matt demoed, how easy that was. I mean, how easy it was to just simply navigate around. Most of the folks in your jurisdiction probably aren't super technical. They're not the most technical folks. They may not have an understanding of how all these 3D things work, or some of these more complex analysis tools. But you saw the ease it was to bring it in, to analyze, to make a couple of quick measurements, to do. There's a whole bunch of other things that we just didn't simply have time to show, like view shed analysis and threat domes and flood analysis, and all these things are possible with 3D. And again, you don't have to do any additional collect. There's not like we have to go do another flyover just to capture this imagery to do a 3D mesh. If you're contracted with Eagleview and you're doing a flyover, whether it be annually or semi-annually, you're going to be able to take that existing data, and Skyline can turn it into these beautiful 3D meshes that are available in our application. If you wanted to do more complex measurements like Chris showed, then you have access to the Terra Explorer, which that is desktop software, but not everyone in your jurisdiction is going to need that, right? So maybe for the more in-depth or 3D analysis that are out there. And then additionally, if you want to bring that into Esri environments or something like that, we're able to stream that data directly into that as well. So again, you're not having to store, you're not having to learn a whole new set of software. You can bring it right into an Esri environment and just do a lot of complex measurements without even leaving your desk. So from that, you just saw we showed Los Alamos quite a bit in today. And I'm not going to read this verbatim for you. We can all read. But this is some of the testimonial directly from our customer in Los Alamos. that have used that mesh in real life, making real world decisions and solving problems. And you can kind of see what they've wrote here. They just talk about how it exceeded their expectations, how they can take closer looks at projects on the ground, and they're expanding the use of it throughout their jurisdiction. So really great testimonial from one of our good customers down there in Los Alamos. So with that, we want to open it up. I know there's been some questions added to the Q&A, and I know there's been a few answered, but we definitely want to open it up for any other questions that you have for myself, for Chris at Skyline, or for Matt Paul. So feel free to either type them into the chat, and we have our marketing director, Tim, who's been monitoring that. He can read some questions, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, we can do it that way too.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Joe. I apologize for the Q&A. It's enabled on my end. It's just not functioning. So thanks for bearing with me and putting questions in the chat. Matt has been gracious enough to answer a lot of these on the fly. So if you want to go back and read those questions and read the answers that Matt's provided, please feel free to do so. But we have some additional ones coming in towards the end that maybe we can take that Matt hasn't gotten to yet. So one of them that I see from Carmen is, what is the cost to get a 3D mesh? And I know this probably varies, but if you're comfortable providing a range or just an idea of maybe how this is priced.
Tim, did you want me to answer that one?
Sure.
Boy, it's as you were saying, Tim, it depends on a couple different factors. Really what it comes down to is the size, the AOI that the customer wants. We do charge by the square mile. And there's also, depending on what the customer's typical GSD is, or the resolution, the quality of the imagery that they fly. So those two things factor into it. I'll leave it up to, I know, Joe, if you want to provide any more information on that.
Yeah, typically in a venue like this, we're going to defer to our sales team because there are so many factors. Again, whether if you're doing a 6-inch collect over a small AOI or a 1-inch collect over a large AOI, there's so many different factors that go into it. So we highly encourage you to touch base with your Eagleview sales representative, and they'll be able to provide you some quotes and tell you the exact pricing for the area that you're looking for.
Great, thanks, guys. Question for the group: is there a way to visualize flooding extents or depths using the demonstrated tools?
Chris, did you want to answer that? You're on mute.
I'll take that one. Hi, Jeremy. I saw that as your question. I think we spoke before. We have a flood tool in Terra Explorer itself, so that will do limited types of flood analysis right in the Terra Explorer desktop software. Another way to do that, though, is you can export to third-party applications, do the flood analysis in a third party, bring it back in as a 3D GIS layer and overlay it in 3D. So there's a lot of ways to do that. We have some limited capability to do flood analysis, like I said, right in the Terra Explorer tool using that 3D data set, but you have a lot of flexibility. So if you have another tool, again, you could push the data out to the other tool, do the flood analysis, bring it back in and visualize it in 3D in a very intuitive way.
Great, thanks, Chris. And can you speak to the accuracy of the analysis or the measurements that you're taking during the analysis?
The accuracy with PhotoMesh is the underlying software that produces this. And generally it depends on the resolution of the imagery, but as a general rule, we're getting accuracy within 2 pixels of the source imagery. So if you've got 1 inch, it's typically 2-inch accuracy or better. 3-inch is going to be 6-inch or better. And normally close to the resolution of the imagery that you've got. So and that really is very dependent on the source data, the registration of the source data, and so forth, and the whole process. With the process we have with Eagleview, we're getting very accurate data sets, typically in line with the accuracy of the imagery itself.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. So that I 100% agree with that. And remember what Chris said earlier, if you have ground control points, if you have LiDAR that was captured around the same time as the imagery, remember, it should be captured around the same time because you don't want it to be, a year off or anything like that. But there are ways to even further enhance the accuracy of these models, which will then obviously affect the measurements themselves. So, but even without those things, they are very, very accurate.
Excellent, thanks. And Chris, you showed a graphic, right, that showed where you could stream all of this data to. Question came in, when you're talking about streaming to Esri, are you talking about the Arc Pro extension, or is there a way to get the data directly?
It can stream directly to Arc Pro, I believe. It streams out SLPK, which is the native format for Esri. So you can basically connect. And now I would caution you, you're probably not going to get the same level of performance in Esri viewing these really large data sets with streaming as you are in Eagleview 3D and Skyline Terra Explorer, but you can stream the data. And that's a really important thing because you don't even have to copy the data over. You can take the data that's already stored and hosted for you by Eagleview and stream it right into Esri. So a very powerful capability.
Great, thanks. And Joe, you mentioned earlier that the fact that this is streaming doesn't require large files to be hosted locally. There was a question about what kind of PC power do you need to run Eagleview 3D? And I think because it's streaming, you don't need a whole lot of horsepower here.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm definitely not a guy who can rattle off specs. That's just not my strong point. But as you saw today, every one of us, Matt and Chris, were both demoing these capabilities on an average laptop. You know, there was nothing super special about it, especially on Matt's side when we're going through a browser. I mean, if you can open up a browser, you're going to be able to open up. I don't know if Matt or Chris, if you want to expand upon that at all.
Well, I'll jump in. I've actually also commented a little bit in the chat, but absolutely, Joe's right. I don't have a high-end desktop computer. I just have an average HP EliteBook at my desk. There's nothing fancy about it. It doesn't have a high-end GPU or tons of RAM or anything like that. It's just a very, very common computer. We've tested on Chromebooks. We've tested on all kinds of different devices. I mean, I do recommend, obviously, the better computer you can get. Obviously the 3D will be more fluid, but because it's streaming, you don't need a massive hard drive. You don't need, all that stuff. At the end of the day, though, we do have, as like I said, if someone does have any particular concerns about their, you can reach out to us and we can give you, as Joe said, there is some very specific specs that we support. I think the only other spec mentioned is we do need to support, at least for viewing in a browser, we support there's a really popular common web browser, so Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Firefox. So we support all the major browsers, but if you have a unique browser for some reason, you can reach out to us.
Yeah, and I'm not ending the Q&A right now by any means. I just wanted to flash this up real quick so that if you do have those type of questions about anything really, I just wanted to put our contact information up there. But we'll keep reading some questions for the next few minutes, but just so you have it.
Great, thanks, Joe. All right, new question in. You mentioned Eagleview provided flood analysis. Does the software identify current flood zone, flood plain, etc.?
I guess I'll take that. Eagleview 3D doesn't do flood analysis per se. The Skyline Terra Explorer package can do limited flood analysis in the Terra Explorer tool. There are more extensive packages for that, and you can certainly use the data, export it into another package to do the flood analysis, and then bring the flood results back. And typically in the flood analysis coming back as a like a 3D shape file to show the flood levels of different types of events. So that can be displayed back in the same tool as an overlay on your 3D data set. So, but Eagleview in this case is not providing an in-depth 3D flood analysis package.
Great, thanks, Chris. Thanks again to Matt for addressing a lot of the comments in the chat. I think everything that's been asked has been addressed in some form or fashion. So with that, we might want to wrap it up.
Sure.
Any closing thoughts from the group?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again. Hopefully, again, you understand the ease of this. And if you are an Eagleview customer, 3D is something that you can tack on to your existing contract at any point during the, you don't have to wait for your next round of contracting to come around. You can do this really at any point. And because we're already, collecting imagery for you, that can easily be turned into these mesh and easily streamed to whatever application you have. So, Chris, Matt, do you have anything else final to say?
I just want to say thanks again for having us, and we're really excited about this partnership. I think it's amazing the synergy here and what Eagleview has done to make 3D data so accessible. You're starting with imagery you're already using for other purposes and turning it into 3D and making it so readily accessible to your customers and to end users. It's just remarkable. So thank you.
All right. Thanks all. Have a wonderful day.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.